Welcome to my family of BioBytes. Today, one concept under 15 minutes crystal clear. We will be learning about active transport. So, the previous class we were learning about the structure of plasma membrane where we learned about passive transport in the form of diffusion and osmosis. Today, we will be learning about active transport. So here you can just see children in this particular picture. A man, what is he doing? He is carrying such a big stone, and that too he is moving above the hill. And we all know that to do this he requires lot of energy. The same concept is behind the active transport. So in passive transport, that is diffusion and osmosis, we have learned substances were moving from higher concentration, they were moving to lower concentration in passive transport, whereas now in active transport we will be learning substances are moving from lower concentration to higher concentration. So just put it along this picture. So the substances will be moving uphill. That means against their concentration gradient, lower concentration to higher concentration. So let us learn in detail about this concept. Now, so movement of as we have learned, it requires lot of energy, and naturally the energy comes in the form of ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate. Now whenever substances are moving against the concentration gradient, children, anyway ATP is required, right? And ATP, it involves some membrane proteins. These membrane proteins are called as pumps. So to undergo active transport, whenever the cell membrane undergoes active transport, the pumps play a major role here. Right? So let us first, in our first slide, talk about active and passive transport. We have already learned about passive transport. You can see here the substances are moving from higher concentration, they are moving towards lower concentration, right? Whereas in active transport, you see the substances are moving from lower concentration to higher concentration. For this ATP is required, whereas for this ATP is not required. Now in same passive transport, you can see here we have facilitated diffusion, right? Facilitated diffusion means where you have these carrier proteins. You can see these are some protein molecules which will help in the movement of substances from higher concentration to lower concentration. So these we call them as gated channels or carrier proteins. Now this is like a tunnel. It directly allows the it acts as a tunnel which allows the substances to pass through it, right? Whereas this is a channel which will fold outside, move outside and come in and transport the substances. Whereas here you can see in active transport, the substances are transported through this protein channel itself, where ATP is required, and it is going from lower concentration, it is going towards higher concentration, right? So let us learn more about this. Now the most important thing we will be learning here is the sodium potassium pump, right? Now in this sodium potassium pump, so this is a very important topic for NEET. Here in sodium, before we move on to sodium potassium pump, I want you all to observe this diagram. If you see here, I have shown banana, and over the banana we are sprinkling some salt. Now everybody knows that banana is rich in potassium. That means here you can see inside banana we have potassium, and over the banana here what I am sprinkling salt. So salt is nothing but sodium. Just remember this concept, children. Inside the banana, inside you just remember salty banana. So inside the banana it is potassium, outside it is sodium. Similarly in our cells, if you see in our extracellular membrane, so this is outside, right? So outside our cell we have lot of sodium. So sodium concentration is high outside the cell, right? Whereas inside the cell, potassium concentration is high, right? So here sodium concentration is high, here potassium is high. So when sodium concentration is high here, what is low in concentration? Potassium is low here, right? Whereas here when potassium is high, what is low here? Sodium is low here. So as we know, in active transport, substances move from lower concentration to higher concentration. So you can see here the sodium ions, which are these ions which are in low concentration, they are moving from intracellular, that means inside the cell, they are moving outside. So three ions of sodium move from in cytoplasm to outside. So 3 sodium ions are pushed out, and for this, because they are moving against the gradient, they require energy, and ATP is giving the energy here. It is giving the inorganic phosphate and getting converted to ADP. So 3 sodium ions are out. Now similarly, outside, as I told you, outside the concentration of potassium is less, right? So potassium ions move from lower concentration to higher concentration. Unlike sodium, where three ions were moving out, here potassium, 2 ions will move in. So you can see here 2 ions of potassium move in, right? Now here you can see this is very important sodium potassium pump, where the substances are going against the concentration gradient, and this was for the first time explained by Hodgkin and Keynes, right, in 1955. And the same sodium potassium pump is useful in the absorption of glucose and amino acids from intestinal lumen into the intestinal cells. So in the intestinal lumen, when your digested food is ready here, from the intestinal lumen into the intestinal cells, the substances will move against the gradient by this particular process. Even in your kidneys, the reabsorption of glucose and other substances in your renal tubule occurs through sodium potassium pump. And even the biggest one, the nerve impulse, right? The way substances, the way information is carried from one part of the body to another part through nerve cell, that is also through sodium potassium pump. Now here we have, let us learn about primary and secondary active transport. What we learned, the sodium potassium pump is actually the primary active transport, right, where ATP is used. But we have secondary active transport where ATP is used indirectly. For example, as we have learned, 3 ions out, and here, and 2 ions of potassium have come in. 2 ions of potassium have come in. Now if you see 3 and 2, so that means in the extracellular surface you have a difference of 1 sodium, right? 1 sodium ion difference you have. Now this 1 sodium ion, right, it has to go in, it wants to go in. So in this we have here comes the secondary active transport, where this sodium ion goes in, but along with this 1 sodium ion there are some other substances which move along with this sodium. So sodium doesn't go alone inside, along with it, it also carries the other molecule with it. So here comes the symporter. Symporter means, you can see here, this is 1 sodium ion going in, and along with this sodium ion it carries another molecule. It can be glucose or amino acid, which goes into the intracellular space in the same direction. You can see both are going in. Symporter. Antiporter, so where this sodium ion is going in, so here we have the sodium ion going in, but as sodium ion is going in, one more ion will come out, or one more molecule will come out, that is calcium, right? Calcium, it can be calcium or it can be the H plus ions which are not required in the intercellular space, they are coming out. So this we call it as secondary active transport, which we call them as co-transport. That means along with the ion which wants to go in, it doesn't go in alone. It carries along with it some other substances. Right? So if two substances are moving in opposite direction, you call it as antipolar. If they are moving in the same direction, you call it as sympolar. And here you can see one term, aquaporin. Aquaporin is a gated channel meant only for water molecule and nothing else. Then now, as we have learned about ions here and very small substances, what about the bulk ones? Bulk ones, or I should say the heavy molecules. Now they move through the process called as endocytosis and exocytosis. Now I can say endocytosis here, this is also called as eating, cell eating. This is also called as cell drinking. Right? So here you can see phagocytosis is where the solid substances are taken inside the cell. Right? So here till now the substances were passing through the plasma membrane, but here the whole plasma membrane will turn outside and in order to transport these substances. So it occurs through phagocytosis, where the solid particles, for example WBCs or the macrophages, right? So they engulf the pathogens by this process of phagocytosis. Whereas pinocytosis is also known as cell drinking, where the liquid substances are taken in. Then receptor mediated endocytosis. Receptor mediated, they are very much particular, they are very specific to the receptors, right? So there are certain receptors present on the plasma membrane which will take up only a certain type of receptor molecule. They don't accept the others, only a certain type. For example, on the plasma membrane we have certain receptors which will accept the LDL or the low density, or I should say cholesterol, which will accept those receptors only and send into the intracellular fluid. So which are very specific to that particular molecule, we call that as receptor mediated endocytosis. Now next, exocytosis, throwing the substances out, right? So here you can see there is a formation of vesicle. We have learned the endoplasmic reticulum, as it produces proteins, it sends to the Golgi body. Golgi body will pack it in vesicles, and those vesicles are transported to the plasma membrane, and the plasma membrane sends those proteins out. So this is how bulk transport occurs. Now, as we have already learned, comparing active and passive transport, you can see it requires energy. Active transport requires energy, passive does not require energy. Right? Here passive it is downhill, active it is uphill. Right? Passive, it moves along with the natural flow. Active moves against or counters the natural flow. Example of passive is diffusion, osmosis and facilitated diffusion, whereas active transport, it is sodium potassium pump and bulk transport. Here passive we have the channel mediated, whereas here we have pump mediated, where energy is required. Now let us move on to the PYQs. Now if you see PYQs, movement and accumulation of ions across a membrane against their concentration gradient. Against, there are some words, children, which will lead you to the answer. Against the concentration gradient means automatically you should remember it is active transport. Then here there is a new term, which of the following is not observed during the apoplastic pathway of water movement in plants. Apoplastic. Children, apoplastic means something which is dead, right? And opposite of apoplastic is symplast, right? Opposite of apoplastic is symplast. Now here if you see little, right, the movement does not involve crossing of cell membrane. Crossing of cell membrane means this is something to be done outside, right? Then cytoplasmic streaming. So cytoplasm means little bit we can get an idea that it is something which is happening inside. Then next, it does not provide any barrier to water movement, right? So water movement barrier means this is understood like it is something outside, right? Then a movement occurs through intercellular space. This is also outside. So A, C and D talk about the things which are outside. So apoplast means dead and which is out, and symplast means living, which is inside. So live or living, which is inside. So the answer is the movement is aided by cytoplasmic streaming. Next, when you move on to the process of active transport of sodium and potassium ions, right? Sodium and potassium ions, immediately it is primary active transport. Which of the following criteria does not pertain to facilitated diffusion, right? So in facilitated diffusion you don't have uphill transport. Uphill transport occurs only in active transport. So which does not pertain to facilitated diffusion is uphill transport. The next, active transport in contrast to passive transport, the former. So active transport uses energy to move molecules against their concentration gradient. Very direct answer, very easy. Now if you see a column matching style question asked to identify the nature of pump in the cell membrane. So pumps are proteins that use energy to carry substances across a cell membrane, and so pumps transport substances from high concentration to low concentration, right? Do not show saturation, are not sensitive to inhibitors, can transport substances from low concentration to high concentration. The best pump we have learned is sodium potassium pump, where the substances are moving from low concentration to high concentration, where the answer is D. So here we are with today's concept. Hope you have learned well. All the best and God bless you all, children.